Welcome to one of my favorite videos to make all year. Today we are talking about the Indy 500 entry list and just how many cars we can expect come the month of May to be going for the 33 fastest starting spots in the field. Now the count you are going to hear today is going to have 37 cars on it. Now that is not a confirmed number, and certainly I think it is optimistic to count that many cars. I think at the very least you will see 35 entries. I think that is a realistic number, and if I were a betting man, I'd probably bet on 36. But with some stretching and not super unrealistic stretching, I can get the number to 37. Now, there are 28 absolutely nailed down, confirmed car and driver combinations as we sit right now for the Indianapolis 500. That means there's 9 cars that do not have a confirmed driver, at least on my count. Now that being said, I think there's around exactly 33 confirmed entries at this point, so there is absolutely already a full field. However, many of the drivers are not yet confirmed, and so in this video, I am going to speculate based on the rumors and kind of scuttlebutt around the sport exactly which drivers are going to end up in which cars, which are the most likely drivers anyway. And for some cars, I may give you a couple of options, but I'll definitely nail down one specific driver that I think is kind of head and shoulders above the rest in terms of whether or not they get that car. Now, the picks that are speculation, the drivers that I think are going to get in but are not confirmed as of yet, will not only be clearly marked in the graphics in this video, but I will also clearly state it when I am speculating. When it's confirmed, I will clearly state it. So to start out this video, I'm going to start by talking about the teams that are absolutely locked in, the teams that the drivers are all confirmed. We know that there are no more seats probably going to come out of any of these teams. These teams are dead set on how they are going to be when they roll their trucks up for the month of May. So let's get started. So the easiest one to knock out of the park real quick is Team Penske. Now, there was some speculation, some of it from me, that they might go to a 5th car this year for a Kyle Busch or even a Scott McLaughlin now, the Supercars champ who has taken and passed his oval IndyCar test at Texas Motor Speedway. But Tim Cindric has shut down any possibility of a 5th car. So we know the 4 drivers coming from Team Penske. They are Joseph Newgarden, defending IndyCar champion. You've also got Simon Pagenaud, the defending Indianapolis 500 winner. You've also got Will Power, the 2018 Indianapolis 500 winner. And once again, possibly for the final time with all this Scott McLaughlin talk, Helio Castroneves, the 3-time Indy 500 winner, who will be looking for his record-tying 4th victory. And that's Team Penske. That's it. It's locked in. It's done. Now we get to talk about something that's slightly more interesting, despite the fact that all the drivers are locked in. Andretti Autosport. A lot of speculation and rumors and news reports about this team that it was going to contain Fernando Alonso. It does not contain Fernando Alonso. We know the reason for that. I did a huge video on it talking about how Honda rejected giving Fernando Alonso an engine. So Fernando will not be in a Honda, but I think he will be on the grid this year. So who are the drivers of Andretti Autosport? Well, the first ones probably won't surprise you very much. Alexander Rossi, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Zach Veach, Marco Andretti, and newcomer to the team, though not to IndyCar Racing and not even really to the Andretti program, you've got Colton Herta. Now, it was confirmed yesterday that the 6th Andretti car, which many people speculated was not going to happen once Fernando Alonso had to bow out, but this seemed like a great fit. James Hinchcliffe, driving the number 29 orange Honda. Funny how that works out. For Genesis, a new company, which I think is Indianapolis-based, coming into the sport to help James Hinchcliffe get into the field. So that's 6 cars from Andretti, and that obviously is one of the powerhouse teams in the 500 field. Real easy one to knock out here. Chip Ganassi Racing. We've known about this forever. Now, they could add a 4th car. It's very unlikely. There's always a possibility. If somebody found money, if somebody found a pot of gold and they went to Chip, I'm sure they could produce a 4th car if they needed to, but it's a 3-car effort. Scott Dixon, Felix Rosenqvist, and new to the team this year, Marcus Ericsson. Lock that one in. It's done. One of the only one-car efforts, and it's technically not a one-car effort, is Meyers Shank Racing, because they've got the Harding-Steinbrenner deal that Colton Herta benefited from last year, where they've got essentially an Andretti prepared and engineered Indy car that Jack Harvey will drive for this year's Indianapolis 500. Now, Jack Harvey actually has run up front in the Indy 500 in the past, and this time having Andretti equipment underneath him, I think, is going to lead to a very exciting run from him, and one that I think will turn a lot of heads in the IndyCar paddock. So, Jack Harvey, lock him in. A team that a lot of people had a lot of speculation about in the offseason. How would they survive? How would they keep going? AJ Foyt Racing. Well, as it turns out, they're expanding their Indy entry this year. Now, last year they did help prepare 3 cars, but one of them was prepared by a separate team named Clausen Marshall Racing. Now, of course, they did provide the chassis to Clausen Marshall Racing as well as engineering support. But this year, they're going to have 3 fully under-the-hood AJ Foyt Racing cars. You've got Tony Kanaan in his final 500, at least for AJ Foyt, it seems, as well as Charlie Kimball, who is a very strong qualifier at the Indianapolis 500, and rookie driver from Canada, Dalton Kellett, who a lot of people are kind of highly tout as an oval driver, so I wouldn't necessarily say he's prime bump candidate or prime bump material, though I think many people will. But again, he's got the Chevy, he's got Tony Kanaan and Charlie Kimball as teammates. We'll just have to wait and see. But lock that team in for 3 cars. And rounding out the confirmed teams, the full teams that are totally confirmed, you've got Ed Carpenter Racing. Pretty straightforward here. You've got Ed Carpenter, obviously, team owner, always very fast, not a surprise. Rinus VeeKay, Indy Lights driver, Indy Lights runner-up last year. A lot of people are very excited about him. A Dutch driver, so obviously he's going to be bringing a big fan base. Replaces Spencer Pigot at that team. And then in the third car is Connor Daly, who is doing the road races for Ed Carpenter in the 20, and then is going to run over or move to his own separate car for this race. And of course, Connor was so impressive last year at Andretti Autosport. I think he can do more of the same in the Ed Carpenter team, but lock that one totally in. 3 cars. All right, here we go. The fun part of the video. This is where we start getting into the teams that aren't totally locked down, where there are seats available, and we'll start out with the most coveted one. Aero McLaren SP, the former Sam Schmidt team, which of course had McLaren buy into this year, and most people are probably going to refer to as McLaren this year. Now we know, full season IndyCar, they've got 2 drivers, 2 rookies, Pato O'Ward and Oliver Askew. Now this is where things get a little bit interesting, because traditionally, Sam Schmidt Motorsports, the team it formerly was known as, would enter a 3rd car in the Indianapolis 500. So I think we can expect a 3rd car, and there is also a precedent for a 4th entry from that team. Now last year, it was through Meyers Shank Racing. They provided, I believe, the chassis and some of the crew members, but then Sam Schmidt helped prepare the car and provided engineering support for the car. So let's talk about this, because I think that if there's a team that's going to expand significantly for the Indy 500, it's going to be Aero McLaren SP, and here's how it happens. I don't think it's much of a surprise, because it's really the only option he has left, that Fernando Alonso is going to land here. Now, he had parted ways amicably with McLaren at the end of last year, but obviously the Honda Japan drama at Andretti Autosport threw a wrench in a lot of people's ideas and plans. It's a good PR move for Fernando to go back there. It's a team that he's familiar with, and it will give him a Chevy power plant, which I think many people would say is the stronger engine on the super speedways. So I would expect Fernando Alonso to land at McLaren. And this also helps because in my speculation that they will have a 4th car, because prior to that, I think the front runner for the team was Sebastian Bourdais. Now, why is that? Well, because of the fact that Sebastian Bourdais' former engineer at Coyne Racing, Craig Hampson, is the lead engineer at Aero McLaren SP now. And here's the other thing. Even with Fernando Alonso, theoretically, in that 3rd car, you've got 2 rookies, 2 rookie drivers to the Indy 500. Now, Pato O'Ward was there last year, but he failed to qualify for Carlin Racing. So you're expecting 2 rookies to work through and get the setup data completely right. And even if you add Fernando Alonso to that team, you're only adding 1 Indy 500's worth of experience. I think they're going to need an experienced driver there, and I think Sebastian Bourdais, especially with the relationship he has with Craig Hampson, would be an excellent choice. Obviously, as well, if you think about it, there's the historical precedent of entering 4 cars generally for Sam Schmidt Motorsports, but also we know that Fernando has a lot of sponsorship dollars behind him. Probably so much sponsorship dollars that it would benefit them or they would at least have the funds if they needed to get another Chevy engine lease and put an experienced driver like Bourdais in the seat. This is the controversial one, I think, but I think they're going to end up with 4 cars in the month of May. So Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. This is a team that, the traditional drivers. You've got Graham Rahal, obviously Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, as well as the 2017 Indianapolis 500 winner and third place runner-up last year, Takuma Sato. Now, the third car traditionally is entered by Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. I can't remember the last time they only had a 2-car entry. It's been a while. And the driver I think that's going to get it is Oriol Servia. Now, Servia drove for Sam Schmidt Motorsports last year, but he has driven the third Indy 500 only Rahal car several times. I think 2014, 2015, 2017, 2017, and then as well 2018. So he has a lot of experience with the team. He was interviewed at the Circuit of the Americas test by IndyCar.com, and he seemed fairly confident that he was going to secure a ride. Now, this was a ride that was originally kind of pointed at to be a landing spot for James Hinchcliffe. Now that Hinch is at Andretti, I think that opens it up, and I think that if Rahal had a choice, they would go with Oriol Servia. Now, there's a possibility of a driver like Jordan King, who drove for that team last year, getting that seat, but I think Servia is the front runner. Dreyer and Reinbold Racing, a traditionally Indy-only team, at least in recent years. Now they've expanded, at least for one car, partial season this year with Sage Karam. So Sage Karam locked in. We know that they're going to enter a car for Sage Karam. But they've also talked about entering a second car, and while it's not confirmed that they are entering this driver, they have said pretty explicitly that this is the driver that they would hire if they have the opportunity, and that is J.R. Hildebrand. So it's a pretty easy one here, and the only reason it's in the speculation category is because it's not 100% confirmed. But I would expect, as we've kind of come to expect traditionally from this team, a 2-car assault from Sage Karam and J.R. Hildebrand. Dale Coyne Racing, which looks a lot different than it did last year, but I think it's going to look very similar at the Indy 500. I think there's going to be 3 cars coming from this team. The 2 full-timers, obviously, you already probably know them, and if not, here you go. Santino Ferrucci, Indy 500 Rookie of the Year last year, will be taking over the reins that Sebastian Bourdais left when he was unceremoniously kind of dropped from that team last year, as well as Alex Palou, who drives with a combination of Dale Coyne Racing and Team Go from Japan. Notice the hot pink on the car. The third car, I think, is, again, one of those kind of similar things to Dreyer and Reinbold, where you know who's almost certainly going to get it. It's going to be James Davison. He was with the team last year. They were quietly very fast, and in fact, had they not gotten taken out in a pit stop with Elio Castroneves, who knows where they would have ended up finishing. But we know that the Bird family, who supports James Davison, has been supporting him throughout this year, was going to have him get a Rolex 24 ride and a Daytona 500 ride with Rick Ware Racing. That didn't end up happening. So you would assume that as long as too much money didn't change hands there, they've got enough money in the bank that they would have something budgeted to go run the Indianapolis 500. I know a lot of people who were associated with that team last year. It seemed like everybody was happy with the arrangement there. So I would put a lot of money betting that James Davison will be back at Dale Coyne Racing for next year. So one of the teams that had probably the worst month of May last year, outside of possibly McLaren, was Carlin Racing, who had 2 of their official cars bumped, as well as the car that was associated with them through McLaren bumped. So really, they were the team that had 3 of their chassis knocked out of the field last year. They will be back, and I think they will at least have 2 cars and possibly 3. Now, this is part of the place where I'm stretching things a little bit. I don't know if they will enter 3 cars. I think for sure you can lock them in for 2. We know for sure 1 right now with Max Chilton, who has confirmed that he'll run the Indy 500 in the 59 car. Then you think, okay, what about the 31 car? Well, there are 2 drivers who were tested with that team and seem to be associated with them for the full season. That's Felipe Nasr and Sergio Sete Camara. Now, would both of those drivers be entered in the Indianapolis 500? I think it's certainly possible. It depends on their sponsorship situation and whether or not their sponsors both want them both in the race. And I think it will ease Carlin's possible concerns about entering 3 cars once again in the Indy 500 if you have sponsors totally covering any liability from getting bumped from the field. Now, not suggesting that Nasser or Sete Camara are going to be drivers who could get bumped from the field. But I think that Carlin, and wisely so, will probably need some sort of assurance that if they do get bumped, it's not going to be financially crippling. So I think if the sponsorship is provided by both of those drivers, I think they both end up getting entries along with Max Chilton at Carlin. So a team that has confirmed that they are going to be there, but not 100% confirmed the driver, is DragonSpeed. Now, this one-car team really impressed a lot of people, myself included, last year by qualifying for the race. Now, they are entering Ben Hanley at St. Petersburg, but they haven't explicitly stated that they are entering him at the Indianapolis 500. Hanley drove the car last year, qualified for the race. Didn't finish quite as well, I think, as they would have hoped. But again, getting in the race is really half the battle these days. So I fully expect that Ben Hanley will be behind the wheel once again, and unless there has been some official confirmation on that I have not seen, I'm just going to leave it in the speculation category for now. But again, I don't really see any other drivers that really have a significant advantage. Maybe a Colin Braun, maybe, from the IMSA side of things, but again, I think that's probably a stretch at this point. So I think if I'm a betting man, I go with Ben Hanley in the DragonSpeed car. And some last-second drama for this video is quite fittingly provided by Juncos Racing. Now, there's really not been too much of a secret that they have had some struggles financially recently. In fact, their Cadillac DPI just recently went up for sale. So their IMSA program is essentially shut down because they no longer have a car. The Indianapolis 500 program up in the air. Now, it would be disappointing if they don't get to show up next year or this year. I keep saying next year as if it's 2019 is 2020. If they don't get to show up next year, it's definitely a big shame because they were such a crucial part of the excitement of last year's Indianapolis 500. And I just hope that they are able to provide the funding, find the funding to get into the field. I think, or at least get on the entry list. I think if they're going to show up, and I hope they do, again, I really do, it's going to be with Kyle Kaiser. I think you'd be crazy not to pick anybody but Kyle Kaiser if you're Juncos because of the just absolutely gutsy performance he put in for that team last year, getting them in the show. So if there's a Juncos Racing entry, I think it's going to be Kyle Kaiser, but I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't worried about that team. So that's kind of the whole theme of this video, is that especially a lot of these Chevy teams, and this is the other kind of problem I've run into as I kind of did the count, is that the way my count is right now, there's 21 Chevy engines. I just don't know if Chevy and Ilmor, even with Roger Penske owning the whole enchilada now, is going to be willing to provide that many engines. Now, my current count is 16 for Honda. I don't know. Do you think I'm really finding it hard to believe that Chevy would enter that many cars in the Indianapolis 500, or that Honda wouldn't enter that many. But I don't know how many would be able to come out of the remaining Honda teams. It seems like the teams that have the opportunity to expand are ones with Chevy engines. It's going to depend if Chevy wants to employ the engineers and the personnel and the infrastructure necessary to support that many cars. Again, I think 37 is a stretch. I've already said it once before, say it again. I think 35 is a realistic number, and 36 I think is the best we can probably realistically hope for. But again, I think 37 would be an awesome number, and I hope that my prediction is 100% right, not just because I like to be right, but because I want to see a big entry in the Indy 500. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know who you think is going to be on the Indy 500 entry list. Let me know how wrong I am or how right I am down in the comment section below. That'll be fun. It's always a great discussion. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.